I've done it. After 2 long years of picking apart every facet of Five Nights at Freddy's, with a level of scientific scrutiny heretofore unseen, I have done what no other could do before. Here in my hand, I hold the entire story of FNAF, fully solved with irrefutable scientific evidence. I have explained every single detail, unraveled every character. No stone has been left unturned. And all just in time for the newest game, Secret of the Mimic. Now, this was all written before this game came out, but I'm sure that it will give us a solid foundation to begin uncovering this newest chapter of FNAF. So let me just take a look and see what we got going on here. I see. So, Secret of the Mimic is finally here. And I'm not just saying this for dramatic effect. This game completely changes every single thing we thought we knew about this franchise. But don't be fooled, this isn't a lore video breaking down the real story of this game. I may have stolen their font, but I haven't gone full game theory just yet. No, today we're talking about how Secret of the Mimic violates the science of good storytelling. Richard, hit that intro. Despite the fact that I've been making videos about FNAF here and there for over 2 years, I've rarely talked about the overarching story. Usually, I'm simply trying to find a real-world explanation for all the insane tech in this sci-fi world. And that quest has forced me to research all sorts of crazy things, from genetics to hypnopompic hallucinations, ethics, music theory, and relativistic physics. And none of that is changing today. Instead of trying to understand the story of this game, I want to understand the science of stories. More specifically, today we're talking about the science of plot, which is the sequence of events that make up a story, as opposed to things like characters and setting. Plot is the thing that drives your characters and story forward and keeps it from being 4 really interesting people sit quietly in a room. But it can be tricky to get right. If done poorly, you could easily leave your audiences overwhelmed or confused. Which, to be fair, is kind of like the main marketing strategy of FNAF at this point, so, Luckily, based on my research, there are 3 main rules you must follow in order to create a satisfying and engaging plot. And those are cause and effect, plant and payoff, and economy of elements. Cause and effect is all about ensuring a logical progression of ideas in your story. Everything should happen for a reason, and should be the reason for something else happening later. All great literary works of our time understand this, from the Iliad to South Park. Greek philosopher Aristotle described this principle as a unity of action. All the best stories should follow one continuous stream of events. One thing leads to another, then another, then another. If there's a random subplot that doesn't connect back to the main action, ditch it. And why should you believe some old Greek dude? Well, he did quite literally write the book on good plot. His book, Poetrix, is the oldest surviving work of drama theory, estimated to be from around 300 BCE, and the principles outlined within are still upheld today. But hey, just because something's old doesn't mean it's always right. For a more modern example, look to Trey Parker, the co-creator of South Park. Oh, is that why they call it South Park? He described a similar idea with his therefore but rule. When you're outlining a story, you should always be able to connect the beats and plot points using the words therefore or but, and never and then. This happens, therefore this happens, but something goes wrong, therefore this happens. If you've ever had someone try to explain their dream to you and it was the absolute worst thing ever, you'll know why this is important. Okay, dude, it was so crazy, dude. Okay, so like, I was back in school, right? And it was the day of the finals, and I was not ready. It was bad. And then we were at this water park that I went to in 4th grade once for some reason, and Stanley Tucci was the lifeguard, and he was trying to sell me a timeshare on the moon. And then, hey, where you gone? The second important principle when constructing plot is plant and payoff. This is all about hinting at plot elements and twists before they're revealed. The example you've probably heard a million times is Chekhov's gun, coined by Russian playwright Anton Chekhov. If you show the audience a gun on the wall in Act 1, someone should fire that gun in Act 3. And conversely, if you know someone's going to be firing a gun in Act 3, you should show off where they got it in Act 1. So snarky people on the internet aren't making posts like, where did he get that gun from for the next 20 years? Trust me, you don't want that. Our old pal Aristotle spoke about this same idea as it relates to twists and surprises. He said that the best endings should be unexpected and inevitable. It's surprising in the moment, but if you go back and watch it again, you can sit there smugly with your friend who hasn't seen it before and see all the clues. And then you can make little annoying and superior noises that accidentally spoil the whole thing for your friend. I'm not saying it. Don't worry about it. It's great, dude. It's great. I'm pretty sure that's what Aristotle was talking about, right? And the final principle of a good plot is an economy of elements. This was, as far as I could tell, first explicitly discussed by American novelist William Goldman, author of The Princess Bride. He talks about how a great screenplay or story should have zero fat. Every scene and character and line of dialogue should advance the story in some way. If they can be removed without changing the story, get them up out of there. If you have two characters or scenes that serve the same role in the story, smash them together. This keeps your story from being unnecessarily bloated. What are those doing there? If you follow these 3 rules, you will have a logical, intelligible, and satisfying plot. Now, admittedly, FNAF has always struggled with the latter of these. I think we can all agree that it's got its fair share of unnecessary ideas. But hey, they were also making things up as they went along and throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck. And are arguably still doing the same thing now, but I'm willing to cut them some slack. With the benefit of hindsight, you could totally trim out a lot of this stuff and not lose anything. But hey, maybe they genuinely thought that Mike being a zombie would matter to literally anything at any point. But it didn't. And I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking that it doesn't exactly follow the first 2 rules either. I mean, FNAF and logic don't always go hand in hand. But if you wipe away a lot of that bloat and use just a little bit of real-world science and intuition to read between the lines, you can find a surprisingly logical progression of ideas. For example, let's try applying the therefore but rule to the character of William Afton. William and Henry wanted to create a more immersive experience at their animatronic pizza restaurant. Therefore, they made hybrid suit animatronics called the Springlock suits. But they were also pretty stupid and bad at their jobs. Therefore, the suits they made were incredibly dangerous. Therefore, William's son ended up getting killed by one of them. Because of that, William promised to put his son back together. Because Henry helped him make the springlock suits, and because William's a narcissist who's not about to blame himself, he blamed Henry and decided to murder Henry's kid as payback. But in doing so, he observed Henry's kid possess one of the animatronics. Therefore, he decided to start studying ghost magic to try and fulfill his promise to his own child. But in order to understand it better, he had to start murdering a whole bunch of kids. Therefore, his son Mike had to come in and try to stop him. And then Mike turns into a zombie for some reason. We were so close! Or take the Mimic. For the main antagonist of many of the latter FNAF games, it does seem to come out of nowhere. But, as I've explained in these two videos all about the Mimic and real-world AI, this machine learning technology has actually been in the series as early as FNAF 2, with the security puppet's ability to track colored armbands, or the facial recognition software of the toy animatronics. In real life, this exact same tech eventually gave rise to language models like ChatGPT, meant to mimic real-life human speech. Yes, it is unbelievably subtle, but they did plant the seeds for this sort of tech much earlier in the story. Even if they didn't mean to at all. In those old videos, I made the argument that William wanted to use Henry's AI tech to try and bring his son back when all the remnant and murders didn't work. But in order to learn how to use it, he did a test run by training a copy of it on himself, giving rise to the murderous Glitch Trap and the Mimic. And why did Henry develop this AI tech in the first place? Because he wanted to prevent another incident of someone getting killed by an animatronic. It all ties back to that one inciting incident. It's all one action. Aside from all the other stuff that's not, but again, we're not worried about that. Sure, it might get lost in the sauce at times, but at its core, this is the story of two men, and the way that they reacted to an incredibly tragic event. I give William a lot of crap on this channel for how dumb he is, but I unironically really like that characterization of him as sort of a delusional capitalist who's too arrogant to realize how dumb he is. It's a great cautionary tale that's surprisingly relevant in today's day and age. Y'all remember the Titan sub? William is a raging narcissist defined by his hubris and idiocy who does horrendous, unforgivable things. But at the same time, there is an ounce of humanity buried deep. He is a father who wants to fulfill a promise to his deceased child. For entirely selfish reasons, yes, but you can see how he might be the hero of his own story. He's not just a bad guy who's bad because he's bad. And Henry is defined by his cowardice. We know that Henry is a genuinely smart man, so I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that the springlocks were William's idea, and Henry probably saw the dangers inherent in the springlock suits, as designs proposed by businessmen and ideas guys are wont to have. But he didn't push back. Maybe he was afraid of losing William's business expertise and funding, or maybe he just convinced himself that everything would be fine. But in the end, he failed to stand up to William, and it caused his whole world to burn down. So it's fitting that he's the one to ultimately rise up from the ashes, overcome his cowardice, and take William down, to defeat the monster that he feels he created. It's all tied up in a nice, neat bow. That intro was not a bit, y'all. I'm telling you, I actually solved FNAF. Until this game came along. Now, I won't go into the full details on the story of this game. There's a great video by Rye Toast if you want that. But it does make a few major, I'll say it, retcons that completely changed the FNAF story as we know it. Like, for starters, you know those spring lock suits that I've been ragging on about all this time? The ones that literally kicked off every single event from this series? Turns out they weren't designed by William or Henry. They were designed by some dude named Edwin, who was contracted by Fazbear Entertainment. Now, first of all, from a timeline perspective, this makes no sense. We've known for years that these Springlock suits were made for the first Freddy's establishment, Fredbear's Family Diner. Fazbear Entertainment shouldn't even be a corporate entity yet, and they shouldn't have the money to contract anyone to begin with. Not to mention, they literally already have an animatronic engineer on their books, so why would they need to contract anyone in the first place? It kind of removes one of Henry's major purposes in the story, and it completely removes William's motivation to go after Henry's daughter to begin with. If anything, he should be mad at Edwin, the guy who actually made the suits. Now the decision to kill Henry's daughter is just a random act of violence. We've removed a therefore from our plot and added an and then. But while that is a pretty major change to the larger FNAF story, the Springlock suits are a pretty minor part of this game. The much bigger revelation is the secret origin of, well, the Mimic, who's in the title. Apparently, it wasn't created by William or Henry. It was made by some dude named Edwin again. While he was working for Fazbear, his wife died, and Edwin decided to create an AI program to try and bring her back, and it kinda worked. A few years later, his son David died, and he tried to make another AI program, and this one really didn't work, and it wound up trying to murder him and a whole bunch of people. Now, does any of that sound familiar? It should, because it's pretty much the exact same thing that both William and Henry tried to do. We're just retreading the same ground over and over and over again. Hell, there's even evidence to suggest that William and Edwin's sons are both named David. So before we had a single action, where everything was derived from two characters' reactions to a single pivotal inciting incident. William's obsession with understanding ghosts led to all the murders and possessed animatronics from the first few games, and Henry's delve into AI security systems to prevent a further tragedy eventually led to the AI threats of the modern games. But now we also have this third dude named Edwin who actually created the animatronics that caused William's son to die, meaning that William was genuinely not to blame for his son dying, and neither was Henry, but he still kills Henry's daughter anyway for reasons, and now we have two dads who have both lost their kids and want to get them back, but also Edwin's son died in a completely unrelated way, and he made the AI to try and bring him back, and then that AI turned evil and started impersonating William for some reason, even though they had literally no connection. It feels like this game completely upended the entire story of FNAF so they could shoehorn in this new OC to make him feel more important at the expense of all the other more interesting characters. And the solution to all of this is blindingly simple. Edwin simply does not need to be there. From an economy of elements perspective, all of Edwin's roles could have been fulfilled by someone else. We already have two fathers who have lost kids. We already have a genius inventor who could design a lot of the more outlandish tech, and we already have someone who works with AI and might want to use it to bring back a child. In terms of plant and payoff, prior to this, Edwin had never been seen, mentioned, or even hinted at in any previous game. His only other appearance was in some of the short stories, where the general fan consensus was that he was basically a stand-in for Henry in sort of its own self-contained universe, separate from the main FNAF canon. And that was a pretty easy assumption to make, because they both filled the exact same role in the story. And yet, in Secret of the Mimic, both Edwin and Henry are explicitly different characters. But if Edwin designed the Springlock suits, and Edwin created the Mimic, then what's the point of Henry? A guy who just sorta chills for a few decades only to swoop in and deliver a cool monologue to William at the end? Feels a lot less earned now. Just make this game the origin story of Henry and how he was inadvertently responsible for the creation of the Mimic. That's a character that people have actually been wondering about for years. It would have been a great conclusion to this era of FNAF. And then, if you really want to, you can start planting the seeds for a new villain with a new story for the next few games. Focus on the future, not rewriting the past. Look, FNAF is no stranger to introducing new elements that don't necessarily jive with the rest of the story. I've literally built a career on talking about it. But this time, it feels just a little bit different. This game doesn't ask any new, interesting questions. It just complicates things to an unnecessary degree, and actively makes other characters less interesting. And I think everyone from Aristotle to the South Park writers would agree. Last week, I proved that Five Nights at Freddy's could never truly be solved. And this week, I think I've realized that maybe it shouldn't. As a wise man once said, perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And I literally saw... And a huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, including Alakazam, Aspa102, Big Dog Tie for to Win, Captain Kirby, Sidian, Sherry and Mark, Stylish, The Boss Killer 94, Ty Studio, Tricks of Crows, and did you know that the character limit on Patreon is very high? Well, it is high enough, in fact, that I could name myself M.